into the real world, it had become clearer to me that without an understanding, basic understanding of economics, you really cannot run institutions. You can't run government very well.
Okay.
A lot of the problems we have in Nigeria is because people fail to understand or refused to implement what they understand about economics. And it's simply the allocation of scarce resources. How do you do it in the most efficient and effective manner? That's the study of economics. And when you are talking about governance, it's all about allocation of resources. And if you have to do a road and you do a bridge and you have to put pipe-borne water for people and give them health care, and also build schools, and you don't have the money to do everything. So which one comes first?
Which one goes first? How do you
and how do you create money to achieve most of those goals? So you have to look at them to say, which one comes first? Is about the scale of preference. So do I do schools first? Or do I do hospitals first? If you don't do hospitals, people, or do you do pipe-borne water? Maybe pipe-borne water, because if they don't have good water to drink, then they will be sick. I think it's important, and you don't need to have a degree in economics, but you need to have a basic understanding of economics if you want to run institutions very well.
I've always emphasized that leadership is not a rocket science, and that when you hold leadership position, you should see it as a privilege, not that you are very special. We have seen it all over the world where leaders come in the most turbulent time in the history of their country, and they calm the situation and make life better, develop their country and make it more prosperous. For instance, Egypt in 2013. Egypt was experiencing economic crisis, political instability. There was a coup, hundreds of persons died. The escalated crisis in Egypt prompted the military led by Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to take over the leadership structure in Egypt. That singular act changed the course of Egypt from political instability, economic crisis, to become second biggest economy in Africa. In the same vein, Nigeria moved from becoming the first biggest economy in Africa to becoming the fifth biggest economy in Africa. We also saw the same situation in Argentina. Argentina was experiencing poverty, high inflation, economic downturn, and they voted in a new president, Javier Milei. He came in, took some measures, took some economic decisions, took some political decisions, and it changed the course of history for Argentina for the first time in the history of Argentina. Before Javier Milei took over, Argentina had a record 120% inflation rate. After some steps and necessary measures taken by the president Javier Milei, Argentina rate dropped from 120% to 0%. In the history of Argentina, Argentina did not experience any inflation. There was no magic wand that was waved. All he did was to do the necessary thing and address the problem he met on ground head on. Another example is the Zambia president Hakainde Hichilema. He came into a period where Gambia was experiencing economic downturn, political instability, rising inflation, poverty, hardship, rising cost of living. Exactly what Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and Javier Milei did in Egypt and Argentina. President Hakainde took some necessary steps and measures by cutting down the cost of governance and directing funds to key critical infrastructure that will help to boost the economy. These measures boost Zambia economy, inflation drop, rising cost of living drop, the life of the people became better. For the first time in the history of Zambia, Zambia Kwacha, which is the Zambia currency, was the best performing currency in the whole of Africa. As of today, one Zambia Kwacha is equal to 58 Naira. These are just few names I can mention. There are many other names out there of leaders that came in a very tumultuous time in the history of their country, and they stem the tide and make their country better. For instance, even Olusegun Obasanjo, who was one time Nigerian military head of state, became a democratically elected president of Nigeria in 1999. In this period, that was the end of the military rule. Nigeria at that period was deep in debt and the economy was nothing to write home about. President Olusegun Obasanjo revamped the economy and there was economic boom during his period. Olusegun Obasanjo revolutionized the banking sector, revolutionized the telecommunication sector. Emerging industries, offices and businesses were springing up in different parts of the country. At the end of his tenure, he succeeded in clearing off Nigerian debt. Nigerian GDP grew and became stable. But everything Olusegun Obasanjo did has been washed away by subsequent leaders that took over from him. The worst of it that we have seen is from APC-led government of President Muhammadu Buhari and now President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. These people I mentioned did not use magic wand to make all these things happen. They understood the basic of leadership, identified the problem and fixed it head on. But in Nigeria, the reverse is the case. Problem that we have been facing in the 70s, 80s, 90s, we are still facing it in 2025. Why are subsequent leaders finding it difficult to solve the problems that we have in this country? The problem is simple. They don't understand the basic of leadership. To them, being in a leadership position is a privilege that is accorded them because they are from a certain region in this country. They believe that to be in leadership position is their political or tribal right. Hence, they don't take time to study the problem that we have in this country and to find the solutions for that problem. For instance, the issue of power and out-of-school children. These are problems that have been there from time immemorial. But yes, subsequent leaders that have come into this country are yet to fix this problem. They won't even tell you what they are going to do regarding this problem when they are campaigning because they don't even know the problem, neither do they know the solution. All Governor Alex Otti just mentioned is a prerequisite for effective leadership. But when you look at Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration, you would have expected that he would have been doing exactly the same thing that Governor Alex Otti stated out. If he has done all of this, I can tell you for a real fact, Nigeria would have been in a very better position right now. But unfortunately, Bola Ahmed Tinubu is doing the opposite of everything that Governor Alex Otti has stated so far. Leadership is everything. The problem we are facing in Nigeria is a cumulative effect of leadership failure over the years. The decision leaders make in allocating scarce resources will determine the trajectory of the country's growth, welfare, and the global standing. As a leader, you are faced with the choices between competing priorities such as building schools, investing in healthcare, providing clean, portable drinking water, or developing infrastructure. As a leader, your decisions are made based on data, urgency, and impact on the populace, on the people. Before you make any decision as a leader, the first question you should ask is, what will be the impact of this my decision on the people? Will it affect their life positively or negatively? If your decision will not affect the life of the people positively, as a leader, you dare not make such decision. You dare not toy that road. But here in Nigeria, over time, we have seen that our leaders are doing the opposite. They have repeatedly ignored these fundamentals. They are opting instead for policies and projects that prioritize political gains over the well-being of their citizens. For instance, Bola Ahmed Tinubu and other subsequent leaders before him have channeled significant resources into controversial and often unrealistic infrastructural projects while ignoring critical sectors like healthcare, education, and clean water supply. Take for instance Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration embarking on building a coastal road project that will cost 15 trillion naira, and this project will span for 30 years before it will be completed. Embarking on such monstrous projects while you have dilapidated healthcare, 30 million out-of-school children in Nigeria, and Nigeria being regarded as the poverty capital of the world. If Bola Ahmed Tinubu has any iota of leadership quality in him, the first question he should have asked himself before embarking on that project is, how will this project impact the battered economy I inherited from President Muhammadu Buhari? How will it rehabilitate our dying healthcare sector? How will it revamp our educational sector and take away 30 million out of school children out of the street and fix them in schools? How will it solve insecurity? How will it solve power? These were the most pressing issues that were facing Nigeria that needed urgent attention from the government. But the government of Bola Ahmed Tinubu ignored all these things and was chasing an unrealistic coastal road project. Today, Nigeria economy has tanked. Our inflation rate has gone over the roof and we are being faced by rising costs of commodities in the market. This lack of leadership quality is not just peculiar to Bola Ahmed Tinubu or subsequent president that we've had in this country. It's a Nigerian problem. For instance, the former governor of Ebonyi State, Dave Umahi, while leaving office, built an airport in Ebonyi State that cost 30 billion naira. Ebonyi State is regarded as one of the poorest states in Nigeria, not because they lack natural resources, but because of lack of management in managing their scarce resources. As of today, there are communities in Ebonyi State that don't have access to good education. They have just one public schools, and the peoples in that school don't even have access to potable drinking water. They are even sitting on the floor to learn. Imagine what 30 billion naira would have done to the educational sector in Ebonyi State. The governor decided to build that airport because of what he will gain, not because it will benefit the people. Look around in your state. This is the same thing that most of your governors are doing. So it is more of a Nigerian problem. Lack of this basic leadership skill is the reason why we have seen subsequent leaders in this country engage themselves in excessive borrowing without prudence. You have seen how Nigerian debt profile has skyrocketed under Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration. But you need to understand that borrowing is not bad. But what is bad is when the money you borrowed is not utilized effectively. It is not managed well. Borrowing becomes bad when you don't channel the money into critical infrastructure that will revamp and boost the economy. Another way that Bola Ahmed Tinubu has shown his lack of basic leadership skill and understanding of the economy is his introduction of tax policies. Ever since Bola Ahmed Tinubu became the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, he has introduced tax reforms that have affected small businesses and low-income earners. Instead of broadening the tax base and addressing systemic inefficiencies such as corruption and tax evasion, the government has placed additional burden on the already impoverished majority. For instance, the removal of fuel subsidy is necessary, but it is not important. What is important is to fight corruption, stop oil theft. If Bola Ahmed Tinubu has done any of this, it would have had more positive impact on Nigerians than the negative impact that Nigerians are experiencing from the removal of fuel subsidy. Again, the removal of fuel subsidy is not a bad idea, but the utilization of the proceeds from the oil subsidy removal, which the government has failed to utilize properly. So when next an election comes around and you want to vote in for a leader, voting someone that understands the basics of economics, voting someone that understands the basics of leadership, someone that has leadership acumen. It is not by how politically savvy or sagacious that person is, but how that person can manage the scarce resources at his or her disposal. Nigeria does not even have a resources problem. Nigeria do not have a revenue problem. We have resources and revenue in abundance, but our problem is the management and utilization of these resources and revenue. Select leaders that knows how to create wealth. Select leaders that are willing to do the work. Select leaders that are willing to manage your resources well. How do you know these people? Look at what they have done in the past. Look at how they've managed their business. For instance, someone like Mr. P2B, as a governor in Anambra State, you saw how he utilized and managed the resources in Anambra State to the fact that he left excess money in Anambra State savings. When you look at Mr. P2B trajectory, it is related to his personal life and business. Look at how he was able to build his wealth. Look at how he was able to manage his wealth. Look at how he rose from becoming a petty trader to becoming chairman of 5 banks in Nigeria. It is all in his leadership skill. It is all in his frugality. 2027 is around the corner. Bola Ahmed Tinubu that you voted in has not done anything good or well for you. Don't reward a failure. Vote him out and you know who to vote in 2027. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video.